She makes Christmas look effortless. Lights, laughter, a perfect voice soaring over a glittering stage. But behind Hannah Waddingham, Home for Christmas, is a woman sweating through a boiling hot May night in a heavy sequin dress, terrified of missing a note in front of an 18-piece band, glancing down to see if her mother in the audience is proud and quietly wondering if she actually deserves a 100% score when the reviews come in.
From now on, our troubles will be out of sight.
Every song pulls up an old wound. Every joke hides the fear of disappointing the people she loves, and every Merry Christmas is really a message from a stage actress who spent a lifetime proving she could do it all. Today, we're stepping behind the sparkle to uncover 16 powerful secrets you never knew about Hannah Waddingham's Home for Christmas, and we'll reveal them one part at a time. Part 1. A theatre that belonged to her before she was famous. Standing in the middle of the Colosseum stage, Hannah felt as if she'd taken a very long detour just to return to this exact spot. Not a beautiful venue for a show, but home, in the fullest sense. Many people don't know that her mother was a mezzo-soprano who sang at the London Colosseum, and Hannah spent her childhood sitting in one of the boxes high above, looking down at the stage as if gazing straight into her own future. Now, with cameras, lights, and Apple TV, plus all around her, she felt like that little girl again. Cold hands, a slight knot in her stomach. Except this time, she couldn't hide in the dark anymore. The truth that sounds easy from the outside is that she didn't choose the Colosseum just because it was grand. Every brick and row of seats held a memory of her mother. What worried her most wasn't ratings. It was whether, sitting in the audience, her mother would feel proud, or would quietly notice every tiny mistake in her vocal choices and stagecraft. Part 2. A Christmas night, boiling hot in the middle of May. On screen, viewers see falling snow, warm golden lights, cozy sweaters, red dresses, bright smiles. Few of them realize it was all filmed in scorching May in London, on a day Hannah herself called uncommonly sweaty. She invited friends to attend, begging them to wear your best Christmas outfits, and received a wave of complaints in reply. Seriously, in this heat? She laughed it off. If I have to sweat in sequins and heavy capes, you lot can suffer with me. On stage, the lights hit her full in the face, thick makeup layered on her skin, sparkly fabric trapping heat like a portable oven. Every time she bowed, she felt sweat running down her spine. For the first time in her life, she sang while secretly praying, "Please, don't let the audience see the sweat patch on my back." The theme of heat and sweat would come back again and again that night, like a stress test of how much pressure she could really take. Part 3. 18 musicians, a big band, and the fear of running out of breath. She could have chosen playback or pre-recorded tracks, but Hannah insisted on a live 18-piece big band in the Colosseum. It sounded very high-end on paper, but for the person standing center stage, it meant there was no safety net. One off note, one mistimed breath, and the whole musical picture would show a crack. Before the shoot, she stood in the wings, repeating the opening lines to herself, feeling her throat a little dry from the air conditioning and nerves. Each time she closed her eyes, worst-case scenarios flickered through her mind. Her voice cracking on a high note, mixing up the lyrics in front of hundreds of people, or even worse, having to cut the song off halfway. Instead of saying any of this out loud, she swallowed the worries along with another sip of warm honey water. She'd lost count of how many times in her life she'd used warm water as a substitute for saying, "I need a break." A familiar callback. Her body tired, her voice worn, but she decides to keep going. Just one more sip of water. Part 4. A Ted Lasso reunion disguised as a Christmas concert. The audience could see the hugs and easy jokes on stage as Hannah reunited with her Ted Lasso family. Phil Dunster, Juno Temple, Brett Goldstein, Nick Mohammed, Brendan Hunt, James Lance, and even Jason Sudeikis in the guest lineup. For Hannah, it felt less like a special and more like a filmed family gathering. They had been through long seasons together, emotional scenes, hard days on set, press tours that never seemed to end. Now everyone was dressed to the nines, smiling under Christmas lights, but backstage, there were still those quiet glances that meant, "You okay?" without a word. Inside her, the fear of failing didn't shrink just because her friends were there. In some ways, it grew. If she stumbled, she wouldn't just be stumbling in front of a global audience, but in front of the people who knew her best. The callback, the fear of disappointing others, played on loop in her mind, from her mother in the audience to her castmates standing beside her, comforting and heavy at the same time. Part 5. The musical theatre girl returning to her true self. Most people know Hannah from Game of Thrones or Ted Lasso, but they often miss the fact that she spent most of her life in West End musical theatre, with credits like Spamalot, Into the Woods, Kiss Me, Kate, and more. Kate, in her eyes, this night wasn't Hannah trying out a music career, it was a return to where she began. Every time the band started playing, her body responded automatically, as if her muscles still remembered the long, grueling rehearsal rooms of the past, from long before TV and Emmy Awards were even dreamt of. Ironically, the more successful she became on TV, the more she feared the audience would forget she was a singer, a stage performer first. The obsession with having to prove herself all over again has been a repeating pattern in her career. Under the glitter and Christmas bells, this show was, in many ways, a quiet message. I'm still that musical theatre girl, just with a few more trophies on the shelf. Part 6. 44 minutes on screen, months inside her head and body. Hannah knew the special would clock in at around 44 minutes. A cold little number on the Apple TV Plus page. 44 minutes, TV PG, holiday, music. But those 44 minutes came out of months of planning meetings with Dun Plus Dusted, Apple TV Plus, and director Hamish Hamilton. Song choices, stage design, camera blocking, how to make everything feel warm instead of fake. Through that process, she woke up many nights with her mind spinning through lists. Which song opened, which closed, when the guests came on, whether they needed to change the key of that tricky number. On those nights, two things were constant: lack of sleep and self-criticism for being too perfectionistic. 44 minutes is a neat frame, but inside, it lay endless edits, debates, and moments where she wanted to say, "Let's just simplify this," then immediately argued herself out of it. The callback of wanting to ease the pressure, but always ratcheting it back up, had become a habit she could not quite break. Part 7. Not just the star, but the one carrying production weight. Her name showed up not only in the starring line, but also among the executive producers, alongside Katie Mullen, Moira Ross, and others. That meant every choice, guest lineup, lighting tone, narrative structure, passed her desk in some form. To outsiders, it looked like a big career move. To Hannah, it felt like adding another heavy stone to shoulders already loaded with expectations. In meetings, she had to listen to creative pitches, think about budgets, and still remember that she needed to protect her voice for recording the next day. If the show didn't land well, She knew she wouldn't be able to hide behind the script or the team. She'd point straight at herself. I signed off on it. That familiar callback, the habit of taking blame first, turned this dream project into a long-running psychological exam as much as a performance. Part 8. The companion album, A Way to Replay. That night over and over. It wasn't just a one-off performance. There was also a companion soundtrack album, with live recordings from the show released for people to carry through the holiday season. For Hannah, this added another layer of pressure. On stage, a slightly imperfect note can be swept away by the emotion of the moment. On an album, every flaw can be replayed indefinitely. She remembered her cast album days in musical theatre, when each recording felt like a permanent stamp. If she wasn't at her best that day, that version of her would be official forever. This time was no different. She recorded knowing that someone might listen to her "Oh Holy Night," not just one Christmas, but for many years. The callback, "Everything can be rewound," made her even more demanding of each breath, each vowel. Instead of seeing the album purely as a gift, she sometimes saw it as a magnifying mirror, catching every little imperfection she'd tried to hide on stage. Part 9. A 100% score on Rotten Tomatoes, and the fear she doesn't deserve it. When reviews started landing, the Rotten Tomatoes numbers showed 100% on the tomatometer and 90% audience score, a level of acclaim most holiday specials would envy. Messages of congratulations poured in. The team celebrated. Apple TV Plus proudly promoted it. After the first rush of happiness, she slipped back into an old familiar question. Are they praising the show, or the halo of Hannah from Ted Lasso? From the days when she was an unknown stage actress, she'd fought to earn recognition on skill alone, and that reflex didn't disappear just because the scores became flattering. The callback, doubting whether she truly deserved success, resurfaced again. Emmy wins, rave press, high scores online, none of it stopped her from asking, was this just good timing? It's a quiet kind of fatigue that the audience almost never sees, hiding behind all the laughter and cheers. Part 10. An Emmy nomination for the people you never see. The special received a 2024 Emmy nomination for technical direction and camera work, honoring the team behind the lens, technical director, camera operators, everyone who chose each angle, so viewers at home would feel like they were sitting in the theater. Hannah paid close attention to those people, perhaps because she came from the stage world, where one wrong lighting cue can erase an actor's face. She knew that if a camera pan was a beat too slow, a genuine smile from a guest could be missed. If the spotlight didn't catch the moment she glanced down at her mother in the audience, that memory would live only between the two of them, never reaching millions of viewers. Here, the callback, "Who really gets seen?" returned, but flipped. This time she worried not about herself, but about whether the invisible crew would be acknowledged. On a night when all eyes were on the host, she found herself thinking a lot about the tiny names that would scroll by in the end credits. Part 11. Old songs, new wounds being unwrapped. The set list looked familiar enough. What Christmas Means to Me, Oh Holy Night, and other classics. But for Hannah, each song carried its own layer of memory. Some her mother used to sing, others she heard during lean years. Some reminded her of standing backstage, watching other people take the spotlight. On that stage, she wasn't just singing. She was negotiating with her own memories. At certain points, her throat tightened, not from the high notes, but from images crashing back. The borrowed dress, the fear of not being called in a casting room, Christmas seasons spent working far from home. The callback, Old Wounds Wrapped in Music, shimmered and throbbed at the same time. The audience heard a beloved carol. She heard a conversation between her present self and the shadows of who she'd been. Part 12. 1. Look at her mother's seat, and nearly losing the words. In a short speaking segment, she mentioned her mother, who had sung at the Colosseum years before, and the camera quickly cut to an older woman in the audience wiping away tears. In that instant, Hannah felt the vast theatre shrink into a small room with just the two of them in it. She knew she had to continue, keep the show's rhythm going, but in her chest was a familiar tightness, the same one she'd felt as a child trying to prove, "I can do it too, Mum." Suddenly, the script for her next lines blurred, as if the stage lights were too bright and had washed the words away. Once again, the callback of almost losing control at the moment that matters most showed up. It was the same feeling she'd had standing in front of audition panels before the Emmys, during the first day on Ted Lasso. The difference this time was that she refused to let herself trip. She took a breath, smiled, added an improvised joke, and let the audience's laughter carry the moment forward. Part 13. The invitations with a half-joking threat. If I'm suffering in the heat, so are you. The story about the scorching weather and Christmas outfits wasn't just a press anecdote. It began with the invitations Hannah sent to her friends, clearly stating, "Dress code, Christmas finery. No half-hearted attempts allowed." Her phone buzzed non-stop with replies. "Are you insane? I'm sweating just reading this." She stared at the screen, laughing to herself, but underneath was an old anxiety. If the audience didn't look Christmassy enough, the magic she was trying so hard to build might evaporate. And so once again, she raised the bar for everyone else because she refused to lower her own standards. The callback, pulling others into her perfectionism, showed itself. Friends, crew, even the live audience, caught up in the wake of her refusal to compromise. Part 14. A sketch with Brett Goldstein, When Comedy Masks Live Show Pressure. Among the most beloved moments for Ted Lasso fans was the comedy sketch with Brett Goldstein, where Roy Kent's dry, gruff energy collided with Hannah's explosive warmth on stage. Backstage, they rehearsed the timing of every line and pause. Live comedy doesn't allow for, "we'll fix it in post," like a sitcom does. Hannah knew that even a tiny slip in pacing could turn a joke into dead air. With her usual perfectionism, she couldn't bear the thought of any moment dying on her own stage. Here, the callback "no safety net" returned, not in musical high notes, but in comic beats. She had to guard her singing voice and nail the comedic rhythm at the same time. Two kinds of pressure wrapped in the just having fun veneer the audience saw. Part 15. Becoming part of Apple TV Plus' Christmas package. A few years on, the show's title kept reappearing in Apple TV Plus holiday roundups, listed alongside Mariah Carey's Magical Christmas Special and other festive content. That meant every Christmas, new viewers would stumble upon her in a sparkling gown in front of a giant tree. The special wasn't just a one-off event. It was gradually becoming part of the platform's holiday menu, something people might put on while hosting, wrapping presents, or sinking into the sofa on a lazy December night. Lazy December. For Hannah, that was joy, mixed with another type of pressure. The callback, "this will be replayed every year." If there was a moment she wasn't happy with, it wouldn't just play a second time, it might play a third, a 10th, once every year, in front of millions. It felt as though she'd been frozen in that specific version of herself from that night, while in reality, she kept growing and changing. Part 16. Proof of the line, stage actors can do everything. In interviews, journalists talked about how Hannah brought two worlds, television and theatre, together in one night, reinforcing the idea that stage actors are not less than anyone. They can sing, act, host, and carry the energy of both a live house and a global streaming audience. Inside, Hannah remembered every time she'd heard people say, "Stage actors belong in the background, not as the main face." Each walk onto that stage, each high note, each story she shared that night was an answer to those old, limiting statements. The final callback pulls everything together. The sweat on that hot May night, the sleepless planning, the perfectionism that made her hard on herself, the fear of not being enough, and the instinct to take responsibility first. All those negative patterns, seen from a distance, were actually the fuel pushing her into the place where a whole theatre and millions of viewers could call her special by one name: home for Christmas, and on a deeper level, home within her own career.